There we go. All right. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to the Musics and Music Show. Glad, as always, to have you out there listening or watching. And if you watched this show in January, like you should have, then this face is not unfamiliar to you at all. I can see from the number of views that that show that she was on has had, that it has been one that caused a lot of a stir that people have learned a lot from. And that is even why this other show is happening today. This is not just, I just said, oh, what do I have some time on my hands. Who can I go grab and just come do something? No, this was a necessity. This show is a necessity. Before we go on any further, I'm going to go and ask our guests, for those who may not have seen the original show or may not remember, but she gets younger and younger as the days go by. Maybe they haven't recognized her. I'm going to ask her to go ahead and please introduce herself to us.
Hello, everyone who's watching, listening. Such a pleasure to be back, and thank you so much. I call her Sister EGBE, so I will refer to her as Sister EGBE. But thank you so much for having me back on this platform. I am definitely delighted to have actually done the first episode and that I'm back, and I will absolutely be back again for more.
Yes, you're welcome anytime.
I am Bernadette Kilo, MD, medical doctor by training, and I work as an autism consultant for a medical group right here in Georgia. Not only do I do that as do autism as a consultant, but I also help parents address the challenges of raising a child with autism, parenting tips and tricks of how to raise a child with autism, understanding what autism is in general. And I do that not only here in my local state in Georgia, where I am also a support parent for the entire state of Georgia. I also do the consulting aspect of it as far as Cameroon and any other country that has reached out so far to tap into my expertise. So I bring a cultural relevance to understanding autism.
Right. And even here, you're talking about Cameroon, but even here in the United States, it's not as if it's just Americans that you cater to. You cater to other communities, African communities in particular, right here. If you watch the other show and listened well, you heard her say she even first got her, I don't want to say recognition, but got to work with the Nigerian community before coming onto her own or our own Cameroon community. And that's kind of where we'll be going this time. This is not, this is a particularly tailored show that arises from the questions and other concerns that came from the last time she was on here, and that are just naturally also evolved in the community. She's doing this based on, I cannot thank her enough, first of all. She's doing this based on what she hears parents and caregivers talk about, their concerns, their worries. So instead of having to do that one-on-one a million, a trillion times, like she already does, she thought maybe she would come over here and come and address some of those issues and those questions that people have. So I will be honest, I'll first up, look, I had her type out the things, those issues. I know we'll talk about other things, but I had her type out the points that need to be addressed. I'm going to cheat off the thing here. This is what she sent me, because I don't want to even take the chance of just going off on a tangent and then we don't address the specific concerns that people have sent our way that they want to know about. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and just go off this and have you just address each point like you put it. There's A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so I'm going to start with, first of all, the focus is what you must know from pre-diagnosis to post-diagnosis. That's what she's going to be talking about today. So the A part is this. You have concerns. Your child seems to be doing or not doing things that have you wondering if there is more to it than what you see. What do you do?
Absolutely. And so first things first, once you have a concern, the first thing you want to do is discuss that concern with your child's pediatrician. Tell them specifically what the concern is. I have concerns that my child is fill in the blank. What I am noticing in terms of how we are communicating that information to the pediatrician, my people, is very challenging. When we tell the pediatrician, and this is where I'm seeing common, and this is unintentionally being overlooked. So it's not that the pediatrician does not know, but it's because how you, the parent, is communicating that information to the pediatrician and how things can get missing. And so when you tell the pediatrician, my child isn't speaking or my child isn't talking, those two words, how that gets changed into a pediatrician telling the parent that, oh no, wait, give it time, which is a big mistake to begin with. But the reason why is the pediatrician turns around and talks to the child. Now, at that moment, the child could either respond with one word. This is where the unintentionally overlooking is, because if the child is responding one word only, keep in mind the pediatricians have 15, maximum 20 minutes with each
by consultation, yes.
Absolutely. And so they're not sitting and processing that within the space of time that I have had this child has only, first of all, used only one word in expressing themselves. 2, how many of those one words have they used? 3, are they using those one words functionally? Walking in an exam room and just saying, mama, 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 mama. Are we truly trying to call mama?
Right.
Or are we just, so are we using that word mama functionally?
Right.
And so it could get mistaken and it could be missed because we said my child isn't speaking and my child isn't talking.
Right. But some sound has come out of his voice. He's actually articulated the word mama, and then maybe
So
the child is sitting there thinking, okay, he's just calling for his mother because he loves his mother, whereas it may not be, yeah.
Absolutely. What you should tell the pediatrician is that I am concerned my child is not communicating.
Right. Right.
That right there is the key
Very
issue.
different thing, yes.
And it's totally different. Speaking and communicating are two totally different things.
Right.
And my people in my community are fond of interchanging those two words.
Right.
So
there's a loss in it's just misunderstood. This person, she knows what the parent knows what she's saying, but the pediatrician that is hearing what she did say, because the pediatrician is not psychic to know what you really meant to say, they will listen to what you actually do open your mouth and say.
Absolutely, which is why the cultural relevance matters. Right. If I meet for example, I'm Cameroonian, and if a Cameroonian parent sits in front of me and tells me, well, my child isn't talking, the first thing I do is I interpret that into pidgin.
Yes, really.
Now, when I interpret that into pidgin and says my pidgin not the talk, then I make the implication that, okay, does she actually mean that my child isn't talking or that my child isn't communicating? But when we look into the pidgin language, we understand that talk is communicate. Right. But unfortunately, when we say it in pidgin, translated into English, the word talk remains talk. Right. But the word talk should have changed to communicate.
Right. When somebody says you come more talk, it's not that I'm going to stand there and just be saying some sounds. It's that I have a discussion with you. You are going to tell me something, I'm going to listen, and you're going to go back and forth, which is communicating right there.
Conversation. Absolutely. Conversation. So it's either we say my child is not having a conversation, because when you say come we will talk, that's a conversation you're about to have with someone.
Right. Right.
So that's where I'm seeing the common errors are happening. And that's where the cultural relevance comes in all of this.
Exactly.
Now, if you tell the pediatrician that, and if they tell you, well, I don't see any concerns here, two things happens, what I'm noticing. The parents who don't want it to be anything, they take that and fly and do nothing with it. Yep. But the parents who deeply inside of them believe that, you know what, something is off here. I don't think so. Find a clinician who hears you. I already gave you an example of a person that would do beyond listening, which is what I did. I took what you said, interpreted it in your commonly used language,
Mm-hmm.
and then found a word that means more than just that, and then interpreted it back into English,
Mm-hmm.
and then understood what you were meaning or what you were trying to communicate to me.
Exactly. What you intended.
Absolutely.
What you intended to say, to communicate, yes.
So you have to find someone that hears you. Find a clinician that hears you. If you really have the concern, you have to push for it. No one is going to come tell you, oh no, no one's going to call you constantly and say, hey, you know what? I think this child, you need to do something about this. It's not going to happen.
The 15 minutes that you were there for the consultation have happened, and then off you go. And then there's this denial that we usually are in. We don't like, who wants to hear the worst? So sometimes you are, as a parent, you're torn between, okay, after all, a doctor talk, say everything be okay. Even though there's this gnawing thought in your head that maybe it really isn't. You said, well, the doctor said so. So okay, fine. And you go away, you go on back. And especially if you're the kind, like we mentioned last time, you're the kind of parent who, it was other people who said, I don't know, your mother-in-law, somebody else is the one that said, I don't know, maybe you want to go have this child checked. So now you're already going with, in your head, you're like, I am not the one who even wanted to come here. Now I've come here, the doctor says everything is fine. You're like, hallelujah. You just go and offer Thanksgiving offertory on Sunday and say everything's good. Whereas it really isn't, because there's a little bit of denial sometimes comes in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing is just make sure you follow the recommendation. If the pediatrician says, okay, well, I heard your concern. I'm asking you to go do a hearing screen, go do a speech evaluation, go do an occupational therapy evaluation. Follow the recommendations.
Right.
What I am commonly seeing, I am saying these things because I have had real life examples. It's not because it's not from a textbook that was research that was done 50 years ago. This is as early as even last week or 2 weeks prior and even a month ago. These are practical examples I have constantly had. And when the pediatrician tells you, do these things, go and do them. What I am commonly seeing are parents who, when they tell them do these things, they get home, I understand the fear. And so you start talking. Well, I took Tina to the pediatrician, and can you imagine the doctor said she needs to get a hearing screen. Hey, hearing, what's at begin the year? What would be wrong? There are reasons why they ask for those things. Now I explain them shortly. And then the next relative comes. So you have this, I call them community doctors.
Right.
They've never gone to med school. They've never interacted with someone who has a developmental delay or autism. And they have no idea what autism is, but they're the best in giving advice to parents. Don't do these things, wait. And then I have these parents who are calling me. They're either crying on the phone and they're beating themselves down to the fact that they listened to all these other people and never did anything for child A. And now they have child B on their hand that is getting hectic and they're not sure if it's the same thing. In which direction do I go? They're all confused and they're like, why did I wait? Now this child is 5 years old. This child is 7 years old. This child is 10 years old. And the list goes on.
Right.
So
when as you had said, just to reiterate, as you had said in the last show, early intervention is key. It's key. So it's not a matter of like, okay, whenever you do, okay, well, now I finally brought it to you now, so here I am. But you're bringing the child in for this follow-up stuff, which could have been done, maybe some irreversible or much more challenging to fix issues have happened since the time when you're supposed to have brought them. So I'm just doing all that reiteration for anybody who may not have listened to that first show, so I learned from it.
Absolutely.
Don't wait. You're better off going and doing all of these things, and they say, oh no, nothing is the matter, than to not go, and then you find out, oh my goodness, had you brought this child, and then you have to live with that guilt, and for you it's guilt, for the child it's setbacks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Major setbacks for the child. And also with these visits that you do, the well child visits that you do for your child, there is an early screen for autism that happens at age 18 months and also at 24 months. So the doctor will do an early screening. Now, there's an interesting part about this screening because we have to go back as far back to see when the concerns were raised. We have parents who sometimes they don't see the concern, which is absolutely okay. but the pediatrician sees the concern. And it could be something that was checked off on that screening tool. And that screening tool is called an MChat. That's the abbreviation for it. But it's the modified checklist for autism in toddlers. And so they will give you that when your child is 18 months and your child is 24 months. That's because the reason why it has to be done that early is because, once again, early intervention. If you intervene sooner than later, then something changes and something happens for better sooner than later. And so when they give a lot of parents that questionnaire, I am seeing different groups of parents. You have the parent who absolutely knows that there's something wrong.
Right.
But because at home, they don't have dad's consent, the checklist is perfect.
Yeah, like go say, that's that they say it's not, that's not the truth. Let's just call it a spade a spade. That's what that checklist, check, everything is fine. It's not true. But then somebody has decided, has decreed that is the case. We're not going to say that this child has any such thing. And no one here and no one know. And that's the thing. And exactly. Yeah.
Because when I get this kind of referrals, I have to go back. I go back and I look at the MChat. And I asked the parents, the child was 18 months. What was going on? Well, the child wasn't talking. It was just making sounds. But we didn't think anything of it.
Right.
Or I kind of thought maybe, but I had an uncle, a grandfather, a brother who did not talk but spoke when he was 6 years old.
Yeah.
I just didn't check anything. And then you have the parents who, when they come at 18 months and there are red flags, guess what happens? They don't show up for the 24-month well check. They don't come back.
Yeah, I try to not.
A different doctor.
Right.
That is perfect. The first one had red flags. The second one is perfect. I've seen it.
And we'll write it off as that whole second opinion thing. They say, we're told that, look, when you get a diagnosis of anything from cancer to, I don't know what, go get a second opinion. And since we're looking for that way, and I don't want to criticize anybody as such, because I know that is the natural tendency. That's what you think, that's what you feel. We want good news. We want good news. We don't realize it's counterproductive. What's the point? Comforting yourself when there really is a problem there. So
absolutely. Absolutely. You have these doctors who they're trained pediatricians. They're great at what they do. And so a lot of times, if you are telling that doctor that you don't have any concern, you can't cry more than the bereaved.
No.
Even if they see that something is off, well, you don't have okay.
Are they going to make you do?
The mother does not have a concern. Why am I going to sit here and force her, squeeze her neck, and say, there is a concern here? They can't do that.
Yeah, so, no, you can't. Even this teacher knows. You call home because you see clear signs and changes in a child's behavior. Mom says nothing, she's not noticed anything, and blah blah blah. How do you tell her when that's her child? How do you force her into saying no? There's something, and I see it till something comes down the road. That's beautiful.
So you have those group of doctors that will not force you because you clearly said, I don't have any concern. But then you have the other group as well that will say, listen, I understand you don't have concern, but I have a concern. And they'll tell you what their concerns are. And when they make the recommendation and they tell you that, listen, I am not the expert, because I have parents who would say, well, the pediatrician did not know what they were saying. No, that's not his field of expertise. Autism and developmental delays is not their field of expertise. No. So if they're sending you to someone who's the expert, go to that person. That's who you go consult. That's who you ask those questions. Some of them don't have the right words to put it in. So they'll send us referrals that will have maybe, they could send us something like, this child mouths non-food items, what we would refer to as pica. They're eating everything, non-food things. They put everything in their mouth. They're picky eaters. And when I look at the chart, it gives me an idea of what this pediatrician is thinking, what their concerns possibly could be. But they may not have the right words to put it in the way that the experts use those terminologies. They may not have the terminology for it. And so I see a lot of parents who confront the pediatricians. And because the pediatricians don't have the right terminology for it, and they're not able to properly go in depth as how maybe the specialists will go, they're like, nah, this one is just walking out of their behind. They don't know what they're saying. So I'm not going anywhere. So
you do the 18, you do the 18, but don't do the 24. And then further down, as things progress, then you come, no, they cannot put words in their mouth. I mean, you go look at, we're both wearing glasses here. If you go and they're showing you that chart over there, it's not so cut and dry. And you say, yes, I can see, because it says, which one do you see better? They click this one, that one. If you keep saying, I mean, they can only go by what you tell them. So I guess what we're trying to tell parents to do is, I mean, to keep emotions aside and your heart aside for the time being, for your child's good and your own good eventually, and think with your head and follow the science and follow the... You're right. Okay, so I'm going to go on to B then. And of course, feel free to go back to any of them when, as if something clicks, just go back to any of them. B here says, the pediatrician tells you or asks that your child gets an audiology, speech, and OT evaluations. Why? I just needed to step aside briefly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause briefly till she's able to come back. So we're back on, sorry for that little pause. So we're tackling B. So the pediatrician tells you or asks that your child gets an audiology, speech, and OT evaluation. And the question was why? But then before you tackle that, what is this OT? What does it stand for?
Right, so OT stands for occupational therapy.
Okay, so audiology, speech, and occupational therapy evaluation. So why are they asking for that? And what should we as parents know?
Absolutely. So these things are, first of all, the hearing screen, which is audiology. In order for you to have expressive language, you need to be able to hear.
Right.
And so the reason why they ask for that hearing screen is not to prove that your child cannot hear. Yes, they can hear you, because we get parents who say, yes, they can hear. It's not that we don't think that they can't hear. But what we as humans can hear, the different, what they call decibels of sounds. And the audiology screen or testing will test the different decibels and make sure that we are actually in range, human range, for all the decibels. And that's what, once we check off on all of those, then we are considered perfect hearing. If one of them is off, then they'll send you now for further testing for that. And that could be an issue as to why maybe speech is a problem. But that's the main reason why that hearing screen. With our own ears, with our human ears, we can only hear so much.
Right.
But this specialized testing will test all the different levels of sound that even us humans can't hear.
Right. They're not perceptible. We cannot perceive them, even if they're out there.
Yes, we can't perceive them, even though they're out there. And so that's why they'll ask for that hearing screen to be done. So make sure you get that audiology. I hear parents say, well, I didn't do it because my child can hear.
Yes, you can hear because you hit the big old spoon, cooking spoon on the back of the pot, spam, and the child was startled. You don't know whether there are other things that the child is supposed to be hearing that are going right over the child's head, because the child is not.
And so that's why that testing gets asked for. The other thing is the speech. Now, there's a lot of things that fall under speech. And for our younger kids, yes, we like to test for expressive and receptive language. Right. Some kids will show up with great receptive language, but they have very poor expressive language. Some kids will show up with great expressive language and they have poor receptive. And then you have the other group of kids that show up with both the delay in expressive and receptive. That's when they call it a mixed expressive receptive language disorder. A lot of kids who fall on the spectrum have the combination. You call them, they're not responding to their name. It's not that they didn't hear you. I'll go into more detail as to that other processing part. And then they can't really express to you in more than maybe 5 word length utterances, what they can't express their wants and needs. The bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes a mixed receptive expressive language disorder. And so that needs to be, that's why that speech evaluation is there, is for you to have that chance to see where they are in their language acquisition skills and how they are able to communicate with the language that they have. So that evaluation is pertinent. For the younger kids, yes, I would say from age 5 below or 6 below. For our kids that are 7 and above, there is one specific area of speech that must be evaluated. It's commonly missed, especially if a child is so verbal. When I use the word here, verbal, these are those kids that they can tell you so detailedly about dinosaurs, for example, or they can detail to you the engine of a Boeing 737. That was the most fascinating conversation I ever had. To be honest with you, I had nothing to tell that kid. He was only he was 3 years old.
Wow, that's a genius. Because you're sitting, you have no clue. So that's a genius in that specific area right there.
Right. So they can tell you that much detail about the engine of a Boeing 737. But ask them a question as, where do you live? What's your home address? They're lost. Do you have a dog? Yes. What's your dog's name? Marty. Tell me what you like doing with Marty.
Nothing's forthcoming.
Nothing.
Wow.
That right there becomes a pragmatic issue. And so for kids who are in that age range, 7 and above, you can get a formal assessment for pragmatics. Pragmatics will look into, and this is where the kids who get easily missed at an early age, because they have all this expressive language for topics of interest. But when it comes to basic one-on-one conversation, they don't have any. Those kids get missed and get diagnosed later on. That's because pragmatics was never assessed when they were younger.
Yes. We just said, because for me, if a child that young is telling me about an engine and telling me about something, I'm like, okay, yes, let's go. My child is really like, wow.
Right. Everybody gets excited about the academic aspect.
But then other functional things.
Right.
Yes.
The social skills is not there when it comes to social communication. Is lacking. And that right there is the key category for autism. It's that deficit in social communication. So you can have the verbal and you can have the nonverbal, and they could still get a diagnosis of autism. Pragmatics for those kids who are verbal is absolutely pertinent. The pragmatics will look into other subcategories of speech that include things like semantics, morphology, phonology, syntax, phonetics, those areas.
And those are things, those terms, I know them to my fingertips. I'm very familiar with them because I am a language person. And I'm just going, oh, poor parent, how are they going to figure this out? Because sometimes even on our adult groups here, I see somebody and I'm saying, with French that I teach, you try to say, this adjective is tied to this noun. This word is describing this thing right here, not the other person that they talked about earlier on in the sentence. The person they're referring to as this is not, because there have been 3 people who have been mentioned there in that whole paragraph. Now they've mentioned this thing. The child is saying, okay, that person, and I'm going, no. And it's a comprehension test that they've been given. And you say it's not right. And the child is really adamant, saying, but it says right here, this word. And then this, and you're at a loss. You talk until you're blue in the face, and they don't get the fact that they're not tying. Say, like I talk about syntax, morphology, word order in the sentence and everything. Oh my goodness. That's why they're not doing well in that class at all. They can't. They're not unable to do it.
Exactly. And the parents are not understanding that this minor detail matters, because here you have a child, just because your child can talk, can say all these things, can read. I met a little, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. He was 3 years old. I actually asked this child for his autograph because I know for sure, without a doubt, these are one of those that, and we get them every now and then when they come to the office, and we're like, we send a message to each other at work, and we're like, oh, we have a genius in the building, and we all go running with our little pads, and we collect signatures.
Right, right.
Want your signature. And this 3-year-old, unbelievable. This child could read anything we gave him. We gave him our notes on the computer. He pretty much read our notes. He read anything. He's reading like subscribe. I'm like, what in the world? But he can't talk. I know you guys are looking at me like, what do you mean he can't talk?
Did he just display an extreme high level of Susan? So we have them, we don't like maybe these kids that we have on TV shows that they say, oh, little kid, come sit here. What's 100,000 million times 300 billion? Bam, they come up with the answer.
Right.
I would be thinking that's a genius right there. I would not think of anything else. I'm not saying that all the children, or disclaimer, I'm not saying all the children whom we see like that, that's the case.
Right.
That's a possibility.
Right. Right. And so we're like, oh my God. So I was like, please, can I get your autograph? And this little kid is looking at me like, why he was really confused, but it was interesting to see that.
He was run of the mill, ordinary. What's so special about that?
The mother was so adamant about, because everybody told her, oh no, there's nothing wrong with him. Oh no. The sad part about this kid who can read, and he's definitely showing signs of genius. They easily get missed. Even those who have fantastic vocabulary. I've seen 3-year-olds who have this, they have high use of words that you're like, wait a minute, where did you learn this? Like,
right.
But the simplest things they can't express, and they can't tell you that, you know what, I feel sad.
Yes, the emotions, they're pretty much, I don't want to offend anybody. They're pretty much like a machine, a programmed machine that is excelling at what it is that in that aspect, and then unable to do something that is not to be programmed. Let me jump in and ask you, even though that was not on the script, kind of, what are we to do then? If that's the case, what do we do?
That speech evaluation must be done. It doesn't matter at that age, because I know parents will say, but my child the parents resist to do the speech evaluation, because I've had a mom who has come to me, and yes, their child is struggling in school. I look at the grade level that the child is, and she tells me, but the pediatrician put in an evaluation for speech. My child does not need a speech evaluation. He can talk. He talks very well. And I tell the mom, I'm like, I'm glad he can talk. But I'm noticing, so I asked her, what subjects is he having issues with? And when she lists the subjects, I noticed one thing common in all the subjects. It requires a lot of reading. You have to read. Now, that's where pragmatics comes in. When they are using words, when words are being used in a social context, these words, when we don't understand it, once the social context changes, I'll say, for example, I have a conversation with you. I'm going to use the word plane. Plane has the two words that sound the same, right? You have a playing field and you have a plane in the air.
Right.
So I'm walking down the street with someone, and I said, hey, I got in a plane to go to Texas.
Right.
Some kids get thrown off by it. It takes them a while to process it, and they're like, wait, you got in a plane? Like, she got in a playing field to go to Texas?
Right.
And then they ask,
or plain, meaning as it's plain, not complicated. There's that one too. Yeah.
This is a real example I'm giving you. So this kid asked me, did you drive a truck? It's a pragmatics issue.
Right.
Get the evaluation, and the evaluation must be specific for pragmatics. If they're not evaluating the child for pragmatics, they will miss, because we've seen where the referral was not specific for pragmatics, and they said the child did not need speech evaluation because their expressive and receptive language were
on par with where they were supposed to be.
And I'm like, you assessed the wrong thing.
Right. So,
absolutely.
If you test a fish on swimming, it's going to excel. You test it on, okay, how to climb a tree. It doesn't do that part. So it doesn't mean that, it's the thing has to be, you have to, oh my goodness, this is a lot to have to consider, and I can see how we'll slip through the cracks.
Yes.
And so that's why you've underscored the importance of having those tests done,
right?
So that they can actually get the proper diagnosis and address the issues that may be lurking underneath that are not apparent to the average parent who may not see that coming, especially when the child instead seems to be extra brilliant. You don't see that there's anything wrong with them. Yeah.
The other testing, occupational therapy, has to be done to rule out sensory integration issues. I cannot stress this one enough. There are two reasons why I need for every parent, if the pediatrician is suspecting that there is more that's going on with this child other than just a speech delay, and they ask for these tests, please make sure that the occupational therapy evaluation is ruling out sensory processing differences or sensory integration problems. That must be done. A lot of times, and this also goes back to what is in the textbooks. Research has definitely advanced. Unfortunately, the textbooks have not been updated. So that's left for either the specialist to pass down that information to other colleagues, or for other colleagues to do the research on their own. If they have the time. Now, if endocrinology is not my area of expertise, why do you think I will sit on a computer at 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning? Time. Exactly, trying to research something that has to do with
my area of expertise.
Yeah, it's not exactly. I'm more likely to pick up a book, buy a book, go to a conference or attend something that has to do with autism.
That's what I consider relevant, yes.
I'm more likely to do that. So it's not uncommon for me not to find something that's autism related. It's easy for me to find it, but it may not be easy for the colleague next door because it's not their area of expertise. So they don't even know where to look for this stuff. A lot of the referrals that I'm seeing for occupational therapy are being put for fine motor skills. That is irrelevant to the assessment of autism, period. It has no relevance. What has relevance is the sensory processing.
Okay. So what exactly do we mean by sensory processing? So somebody who hears that term, what is it exactly?
Absolutely. So sensory processing is pretty much how a child, how all of us, not only a child, but how humans, how we use our senses. There are actually 7 of them, but only 5 of them, a lot of times, is always listed, which is your vision, smell, taste, hearing, and touch, feel.
Learn that in elementary school, primary school class, I don't know what, yes.
Yes. The other 3 that easily, nobody talks about and gets missed, which is of relevance to us, is interceptive.
Okay.
Proprioceptive. And vestibular. Vestibular is your balance. These are those kids that want to swing on their tummy, and their parents are looking at them like, what's wrong with this child? There we go. That's that vestibular. They need that input. That's what gives them balance.
Okay.
Proprioceptive. These are children who have no awareness of where their bodies are at any given time. They have no awareness of personal space either. They will bump into you. They'll just walk to you. A lot of parents who describe these kids are, oh, my child is very friendly. They see everybody, they hug them. They want to hug everybody. Nice.
But it may be indicative of something else.
Exactly. I walked into a house the other day. I don't want to say the day exactly because maybe mom is watching. I walked into a house the other day and beautiful girl, this little child. As soon as I opened the door, she was standing there, and the first thing she did was arms wide open to give me a hug. I was like, oh wow, everybody, I'm sure people who are watching are like, well, what's wrong with that? This is a very welcoming child.
No, yeah. We praise it, we praise that behavior. We mean conk and crack our own children and see. This is something. you know how for us we are like our own tradition says, you know, the salon people, it's not a good thing. So this one that does would be applauded instead for doing it.
So I took the hug, but of course,
For you, it triggered something.
Was triggered. And so I paid attention. Now, this is the first thing. Most children, the average child, we're talking about the average child, okay? The typical child.
Right.
When they meet a stranger for the first time, they stand and look at you.
Yeah.
That's the first thing they do. The first thing they don't do is, they don't do that. No. Now, if you initiate, there are two things I could do. The child could either respond or they could run away.
Right.
Reactions.
But that first step comes from you, the stranger, trying to be nice, and the child is evaluating you first. Like, should I go? Should I not go? Then they actually say they deny people, but usually it's because we go to ask, and then the child says, "No, I don't want to go." Or the child, after you have initiated everything, says, "Okay, I'll go." But hardly ever you just come in. You're not their mother, you're not their father, you're not their sibling, and they just say, "Hey, perfect stranger." Wow.
Yeah. This child is being raised by an African mother. We African mothers, we tell our children, everybody is what? Auntie or uncle. Usually, even if you this is the first time you show up and you look at the child and you say, hi.
Right.
Two things could happen. The child could either say, hi, auntie, yes, auntie, no, auntie. For every response, there's always auntie behind it. They don't need to know your name. They'll call you auntie. So those are the little things that I picked up on. But then the giveaway, of course, the hand flapping started and the toe moving. I was like, I guess I was right.
I don't know. No, I too now walk around. But since I talked to you, I should walk around, look at everybody's child. Everybody's child. You know, my little nieces and nephews, the younger, their children. I'm like, how much has this child said lately? I'm telling you, I don't know. But as I'm saying, or as you are saying, go check. Go check. Better you're told everything's fine. No. They observe, but don't sit down there. Something that looks off and not do anything about it.
Right. So all these testings that they do, it just gives us an idea of where the child is.
Right.
In their developmental stages. Right. That's why they're asking for these things. Now, if those things start bringing back red flags, then of course they send you for further evaluation. But a lot of times the pediatrician already has their high index of suspicion as to what this thing could be. Sometimes they do all that testing and the child comes to us and we're like, why did they send you here? You don't need to come see us because there's nothing here. So it's good to check because there absolutely be nothing.
Yes.
The one point I want to make sure I mention without forgetting is the children who are born premature. The preemies, the age of adjustment or correction stops at age 2. If your child
goes past
preemie and they're past 2 and they're still not acquiring language skills and they're not developing as their typical peers, please get further evaluation. I have seen 3-year-olds where parents are like, oh no, that can become early. I'm sorry, you've passed the stage of adjustment already.
Right.
That's
you're supposed to have caught up by that time.
After 2,
you should stop labeling any deficiency that we see as a result of being a preemie. By that time, they're supposed to have adjusted, just like a child who was born really preemie there, so they keep you in the incubator and everything. At some point, you yourself are supposed to be whole.
Absolutely. So after age 2, if we get referrals for a child who is 2 years old or below 2, we've had that before. A child who's below 2 and they were born preemie, we've given it time. We'll say, okay, go ahead and do the speech and OT, occupational therapy. Go ahead and do those evaluations and begin the process. When your child turns 2, come to us.
Let's do it again and see where they are at the time.
Yeah. When they're 2, come to us.
And if they're not caught up,
2 years, 6 months, we're like, okay, come in now. Let's see you. Let's meet this child. Let's interact with them and see where they are. But yes, I just wanted to make sure that I don't forget that.
Very important. Very important.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this next one, I'm not sure whether it says, so everyone, PCP, your neighbor, babysitter, total stranger at the grocery store, therapist, Shewo America, except with the parent. What were you, what is it? What are all of these people doing? And then it says, except you, the parent, what do you do?
Right. So these are all the people around you are seeing that something is not right here.
It's a miss.
Everybody's telling you that, hey, they're asking questions, they're throwing things. Some of them will be very direct, like, no, this bikini they talk, or no, something is wrong here. And others were like, have you talked to the pediatrician? Or some people might ask, do you have concerns? That's my favorite way of approaching a lot of parents. I usually ask them, do you have concerns? Because if a parent does not have concerns, I just walk the other way. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But when all these people are pointing out things, and all of them are not connected in any way.
They didn't have a meeting.
Right.
Shading call Shufai and say, see, they don't hold meeting for your head.
Yes. None of that has happened. When you start hearing all of this stuff, what do you, the parent? My question was, what do you, the parent, what do you do? Get that. That's when you meet the pediatrician and say, hey, it's okay. It's absolutely okay for you to see nothing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's your child. I'm not expecting you to see something.
And we all see our children with a different lens.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's why they say, look, my own child's own thing that is doing there, I'm more likely to point it out in somebody, the wrong in somebody else's child when my child has the same thing. We just have the natural bias.
Absolutely. It's okay. It's okay not to see anything.
Right.
Talk to the pediatrician. Tell the pediatrician and be honest. Tell them, well, I've had families that have said, grandma sees, and some parents have told me, the only reason I'm coming to you guys is because the pediatrician has asked me to come. We'll still ask the detailed questions and see where you are. A lot of times we need for you to start these therapies. The reason why I'm stressing this is because all these people around you who have raised these concerns may not have the proper terminology to tell you and describe and detail to you. You see this behavior here, this is what this behavior means, and all of that. They may not have the right words for it. But when you go to a therapist and that therapist does the assessment, in real time, they'll be able to point to you. I had a mom before. It was quite interesting how it's like she acknowledges that this thing exists and in the same sentence denies that it exists. And so I'm like, yeah, this mom is really conflicted and I really want to help her. But I could tell that, yes, that denial is very strong. Denial can be very, it's not a fun thing to deal with. But I asked her, does your child flick light switches on and off? She said, no, he doesn't do that. I said, okay. The reason why I told her, I will ask the question again. The reason why I asked the question is because I know there's certain behaviors that go together. I already know what they are. The parents don't know. I already know what behaviors go together. So if I'm asking, I already asked the question and she agreed to it. So I know for sure that there's no way this child is not flicking light switches on and off at home.
Okay.
Absolutely no.
Okay. You know the next thing.
Right.
They don't realize that you know, so you think you can fool, like our children think that they can fool us.
Yes.
Yep.
So I told her, I said, I'm going to ask the question again. Have you ever observed your child flick light switches on? Keep in mind, this time I changed it. I said, have you ever observed your child flick light switches on and off? She said, not at home, but at my sister's house. I said, okay, so I'll go back to the initial question then. Does your child flick light switches on and off?
Right.
She was really confused and she was conflicted. Right. And she said, well, he doesn't flick light switches on and off at home because he can't reach it.
Very different thing.
At his sister's house, he pulls the chair, stands on it, and flicks and spends his time just click, 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 click. So to her, the answer was no, he does not. But later on, when I try to pull it, when I posed the question in a different way, the answer became, yes, he does.
But
Then there was a but after it. Yes, he does, but not often.
mhm, 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 mhm.
I had to tell her I was not interested in the frequency at this time.
I just
I'm
asked if
interested
he
in the
does.
presence of the behavior. Does this thing exist or it doesn't exist? The frequency, that will be gauged by the standardized booklets or questionnaires. But the question is, does this behavior
Is that
exist?
correct? Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I get that a lot of times.
Mhm, mhm.
Parents who are conflicted and they're not certain as to how to answer this
Oh,
question. Like it exists, it's there, they see it. But of course, that part of them is like, nah, I don't think that anything is wrong. And also the fact
right.
I tell her that this thing exists, then does that put my child in this category that
Correct.
something
That's
is
where the whole reluctance is coming from. Where it's
right?
coming from. It's just like if you said, okay, does the child walk around the house without any clothes on?
Mhm.
I mean, I can say, okay, the child is just because the child does that because the child feels free at home. But he has never done it out in public. But if the doors are always locked, the child is inside the house, of course, has never done it in public. When did he ever get the chance to ever do it in public? You don't know that they would not if they were out there. So those things, I see what you're saying. The parent or the person who's observing them is qualifying it, and always with the lens, with that idea of, I don't want, let us not go there. Please, Lord, let it not be that. And then
Right.
that's where they're coming from too. And conflicted is the word that you use, which is the exact word for that. So,
Which
okay,
is
now, go
right.
on.
Which the most important thing, and I want to remind a lot of parents, is that say what it is you are seeing,
Right,
what you're observing.
right.
Say it. Try not to tell us what you think that observation is.
Try to
Because
analyze it. Mhm.
absolutely, because if you already knew what the observation was, then to be honest with you, there will be no need for certain professions like
Yeah, you won't be sitting in front of me.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so
I'll
I
be
just know what you're observing.
right,
One.
right.
Now, we can always discuss later on what you think those things mean based on what you're observing, those
Right.
behaviors mean. Because what you're observing may not be the reality of what truly is going on.
Correct.
So
Correct.
once again,
Which is what they tell us, if you think about it, which is what they tell us, that you should not judge just because you've seen something. Don't judge. So we too are supposed to walk around for some nothing to do with autism, just in life in general. They tell you don't see this thing happening and then just judge a person, and then you find out that later that okay, the person was doing this because there was a good reason. But so what you saw was not necessarily what there was more to it than meets the eye. So now when they're telling you to just report what it says, and they're asking you those pointed questions, answer them first before you can figure out. Okay, next
absolutely,
point,
absolutely.
point well taken. Okay, so now we're on the next thing. So you've done the evaluation, the
Mhm.
diagnosis comes out, they tell you it's autism. What next?
That's a big one. You've done all of these wonderful things. You've gone to speech evaluation, and
OT,
it was a speech delay.
audiology.
They told you, yes, you've gone to occupational therapy, and they've told you the child, yes, has sensory processing issues and maybe has fine motor issues and maybe also has coordination issues, and those things are being addressed. Sometimes the parents will wait a good 6 months. Sometimes I have gotten parents who have done therapy for 2 years. And of course, it's the hope that something will change and
Will go away.
yeah, and that thing is still there, it's still ongoing.
Mhm.
And then they come and get the evaluation. Okay, so you got the diagnosis now. So what do you do? To be honest with you, take as many breaths as you can. That's the first thing I'll say to do. Take as many breaths as you can. Once you do that, please take that evaluation report once you have it, because you probably will not have it the day off, because a lot of clinicians are not able to type the report the day they do the evaluation. They'll
Mm.
tell you that based on everything they've gathered, the
Right.
data from here, from here, from here, from here, from here,
Mm.
this is what, and also from their own data, this is what this thing is. They'll tell you it is autism. or it's not autism. The report will come later on. Once you get that report, I am begging on both knees, read it. Read, if you can't read the whole thing, one specific area you should start. Flip the page over. Start reading the recommendations and suggestions.
Okay.
A lot of parents are not reading.
Right. And then most of us tell ourselves, doctor's jargon, I don't even understand. So why am I even killing myself? They say the doctor's writing is first of all funny. Then now they'll be saying things, complicated things that I don't understand, so they don't want to. So at least what you heard her, what she's saying is go look at the recommendations and suggestions. At least let's do that bit.
Start there. You don't have to start from the beginning where it gives you, and then you find all these fancy acronyms, CARS, ADOS, VAPS, VINA, and you're seeing all this funny, you're like, what in the world?
That's what gets you to stop reading even.
So I'll tell you what you can get from that report, what is pertinent for you. Go to the recommendations and suggestions. Please read that part. Read all the recommendations. One, they'll tell you, do this for your child. Get ABA therapy. Put the child in a school that they'll give you all of that. Read it. Get you a journal and set a game plan. Plan A for this month is do this. Next month is do this. Put goals. Set goals for yourself. It's like any other thing in life.
Right.
Set goals.
Strategize.
Absolutely. Use the plan, the recommendations to set plans for this child. You have to do that. Once you read the recommendations, the next thing I need for you to do is go to the evaluation report.
Okay.
Where it tells you that your child has autism. It will give you the reason why they came up with that diagnosis.
This is really important. I was going to write down, but let me set focus.
There is an area in your report that has the DSM-5 criteria. It will tell you all these fancy things about autism, and then they'll start telling you, in this category, your child, Evan, fell in the mild range. In this category, they will list the categories. Adaptive skills, your child scored in this range. Social communication, your child fell in this range. Repetitive behaviors, your child fell in. It will give you all of that. I want you to find a place. If you have to get a whiteboard, write it out yourself. Repetitive behaviors, severe. Social communication, moderate. Sensory processing, mild. Write it down somewhere. The reason you need to do this is because you're going to be doing therapies for this child. I see therapy plans that are not individualized.
Okay.
Parents are doing therapy for 1 year, 2 years, and then you call me and they're crying. Nothing is changing. There's nothing that's helping. It's not working. This thing is not working. Do you know why it's not working? Because you never read the diagnostic evaluation report. You don't even know what category your child truly needs help in.
Right.
The areas that your child is weak in and the areas that your child is strong in.
Yes.
You take the child to therapy, the therapist will ask you, therapists will always ask these questions. They'll ask you, what is your goal, you, the parent? They'll ask you, what do you want for this child? Okay. You see that thing that you wrote on the whiteboard? I want you to take it and show that therapist and say, according to the evaluation report, Evan has severe repetitive behaviors. I need for us to set a plan that will help Evan redirect some of these behaviors. Evan has
targeted.
Evan has a moderate social communication. Under social communication, it will break down which area Evan is struggling in.
Right.
Tell the therapist, I want to work on this. A lot of children are getting therapies that are not individualized.
It's just a generalized thing. And so it's not targeting the child's.
It's not targeting. And sometimes the kids are getting frustrated. That's because the child already, imagine you having to sit in class and you have to learn the colors of the rainbow every single day.
Yes.
And you already know it. At some point, it gets boring.
Right.
I'll get frustrated too.
At some point, 5 minutes, that would always be all it takes if you're already doing the thing. How many?
I'll climb on the chair, I'll jump on the table, I'll do all sorts of things.
Correct.
That area does not need to be addressed. Let's focus on what needs to be addressed. A lot of parents don't. What they do is they take that report and they're looking for either the word mild, moderate, or severe autism. And then they want to either celebrate if it's mild. Oh, it's mild, so I don't have to do much. No, hold on. I'll tell you why it came to mild. I'll explain to you how that child came to mild. See, the thing, what you never looked at was those categories that were broken down. If Evan is severe in repetitive behaviors, and social communication is mild, the average of that becomes moderate. See what happened here? If Evan has repetitive behaviors as moderate, social communication as mild, guess what his autism becomes? Mild autism. Right.
It's one aspect that has tempered it down, that has washed it down into that category.
Washed it down.
But if you had left that one aside first and said, look at this one, it is severe.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of parents are missing that aspect. You don't know where your child falls.
I would do the same. I see mild and like, okay, yes. I wouldn't realize that there are components in the thing.
Yes.
You know? It's not an aggregate score thing that it is the step by step, piece by piece, each one. Oh, Lordy.
Absolutely. Take the components. Wherever it's moderate, whatever is severe, focus on those components. Take that not only with therapy outside of the school, but also take that to the therapies that are being offered in the school.
Right.
I'm going to come to the academic aspect.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm going to come to it.
Because teacher is there with her lesson plan and it's like, bam, La République, the whole republic is there and you're doing the same thing. It is going over the head of sister and so who is unable. Right. I'm the one who's jumping the gun now, but once you mentioned that I could not help it.
Absolutely. I will come to the educational aspect of it. But make sure you take that. That's the reason why I need for you to review that report. Now, if your child is age 3, they need to have started school.
Okay. That's like pre-K.
Absolutely. They will qualify for the special ed pre-K program.
Okay.
Take the report. If you've done the medical aspect of it already, take the report and go to your county school district and begin the process.
Right. As opposed to going to dump them there with everybody else.
Absolutely. That too is part of the early intervention.
It definitely is.
It is. So you're doing early intervention outside of school, and you need to do early intervention
within the school itself.
You have to start that process.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
The other part where I'm seeing a lot of kids falling within the cracks is when parents are being told about the evaluation that the school will do. And they say, no, they don't want the medical diagnosis because to them, it's a label that follows them for life.
Okay.
So they deny to come for the evaluation. They go to school. The school evaluation only evaluates the child to see how they can help their academic, not their life skills, my dear father and mother. It's just to help within the academic system. If your child is going to stay in school for the rest of their life and not have to interact with the world, then that's fine.
Okay.
Keep it there.
Just learn that if the teacher claps, stand up and do this and blah, 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 some little things that work within the classroom that we all do, and then get to a store and is unable to communicate with the
Absolutely. If you think that that's where, if the school
starts and ends there,
then that's fine.
but
If not, then you need to make sure that when the school has done its evaluation, you let the specialist, if you're still in line, if you're still waiting for an evaluation with the medical specialist, you let them know that the school has done an evaluation and this is the report. You share the report with them. The reason I'm saying this is because a lot of our testing overlap each other. I'll give you example. The school they do a developmental testing, but they're not testing for something specific.
Right.
Depending on what you tell them, they can pull out screening for specific things like autism. They can do an autism screen. They don't evaluate for autism. Therefore, the school system cannot diagnose autism. Based on that report, we have similar questionnaires. We will give you a DP4, which is a developmental profile. We'll also give you a CARS-2. These are all diagnostic tools that we use. The school uses the same diagnostic tools. They call it the GARS. We call it the CARS. They have an ADOS. We have an ADOS. We have similar. So if the school has already done one.
Right. It's good for you to.
Exactly. We need to know. Because another thing is we can't bill the insurance twice for the same test. We can't. So if the school pulled out an ADOS and did on this child, we can't do an ADOS on this child. Right. We can't even, yes, we can't. We could see the child. We could do what was not done.
Finally, you should I guess the parents should just have a big old file, a big old dossier thing. Absolutely. Not carry it with you. Just take that whole bag.
You have to create a big old dossier. One file for medical, one file for academic. Whatever they give you in the school, you put it in there. Whatever they give you in the medical, file it in this one. So have both of them. That's the only way you're going to really have a holistic approach for this child.
Yes.
So you're not forgetting one part or the other. When the school does an assessment, they're trying to see if the child is eligible for special education. That's the first thing they do. Okay. They don't just take your child and just throw it in a no.
Right.
We need to find out, does this child qualify for special education in the first place? Right. Once they say, yes, this child qualifies for special education based on the different testing they've done, now they have to categorize, okay,
right,
which of these categories within the academic system does this child fall under? There's autism, there's speech and language impairment, there is emotional behavioral disturbance, there is intellectual disability or disorder. So these are the different type of categories. Depending on what this child or where this child falls, they'll have to figure out which of these categories they will be able to best meet this child's academic needs, not social needs.
Right.
Academic.
Right.
And so a lot of the testing that is done within the school system is strictly for academic purposes. So your OT evaluation that is done within the school system is more for if the child can hold a scissors, a pen, or a pencil. It is not for sensory processing. They can put in their notes that they know the sensory issues. That is for us to read and pick up on it and say, okay, this can need a referral.
I remember this. Can they tie their shoelaces?
There we go.
The motor skills thing.
If that child cannot tie their shoelace, it's not affecting if they can use a pencil in school. I'm not kidding. They will not offer OT to teach your child how to tie a shoelace. That's for us. That's where we come in and put in the referral for that. If your child cannot unbutton their jacket, can he hold a pencil? Okay, what's the big deal? He can sit in that jacket the whole day in school. We're not worried about what the weather is.
Right.
So those things absolutely matter. They really do matter. Once a psychological evaluation has been done on your child, they do one. That's the only way they figure out if your child is eligible for special education. Once your child is eligible, then they create what is called an IEP. That's an individualized education plan. Your child needs to have one.
Correct.
A lot of parents are not, again, not only the medical aspect, they're not reading.
Right. That ties
What was
right
done
into that education thing they're talking about, because all of us teachers that have those students, we have, of course, it's confidential, but we need to know and do the accommodations that go along with that.
Yes, you must. There's no way an IEP will be created without a psychological evaluation. I asked a mom, can you get me the psychological evaluation report? They didn't do one. Does your child, so your child is in special education? Yes. I said, okay, do you have the IEP? What is that?
Oh, no.
That right there is a problem.
True. But okay.
The IEP,
mm-hmm.
I want you to listen to this. The IEP is a legal binding document between school and parent.
Right.
School is promising to provide these services. If you don't know whether your child has an IEP or not, how do you know what type of services your child is getting in school and if your child is getting the right one?
Right.
There's no way an IEP can be created without a psychological evaluation report.
Right.
I'll come later on to the different, maybe I should just do it now. A psychologist was in school, not a psychiatrist. A psychologist did the evaluation in school. So a school psychologist was part of the team.
Yes.
Assessment for this child to find them either eligible or non-eligible for special education. The developmental pediatrician is outside of the school system.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that will do the evaluation for your child to determine, is this autism or is this not autism or is this something? The psychiatrist is for the older kids.
Wow. The thing is, I'm wondering at all of this because, you know, what I know is what I see there. They actually even have the classroom teacher, because they're there and the parents are supposed to sign off on it.
Yes.
So what is happening that the parent, they don't show up for it or what?
That I am still to decipher. I have no idea. But a lot of our parents, which is why I called you crying, and this is a real story. I called her crying on the phone because I had a mom and I told her there's no reason why you should, one, struggle, two, not know what to do next. Three, I exist. Four, I know other parents who exist who can definitely hold your hand. Right. And this girl is struggling. I cried that day. She had no idea. No fault to hers. She's new in the country.
Yes.
But she had no idea. She doesn't know what a psychological evaluation was. She didn't know if her child had one done. And she had no idea. This is the first time she's hearing the word IEP.
Right.
She gathered every document she had and she sent it. And I said, oh my God, your child has had an evaluation outside of our network and has also had, she had no idea what this paperwork was. She had no idea what these things are. She cried. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we have to help you.
Right.
At that moment, what hurt me the most was, or what was painful for me, was the fact that she has known for years that something was wrong, but she defaulted. She defaulted to dad not seeing anything wrong. And mom is trying to save her marriage.
Yeah.
And then she made the statement to me, autism is killing a lot of marriages. And I said, no, ignorance is what is killing a lot of marriages. The first child got diagnosed late. The second one is on my list. That is a problem. Not the problem that there are two kids, but the problem is the fact that this woman has been in the dark. It's like she's been on her own. And for once, she felt liberated and spoke up and said, she's known for years but she felt like she was alone. She had no support.
No support.
She sees these things and she keeps insisting to dad, and dad is like, no. By the way, I brought you to this country. If you take those kids, you're going back.
And that's the thing that happens with it's happening in this case. And I cannot even say I'm surprised, because that is the same scenario that goes in with other similar medical issues, right down to the woman who the doctor has said you can't, pregnancies, no, the next time it may cost you your life. Right, the man says, no, we don't have a chop chair. You will have, don't you dare go on, no contraception, no nothing, we don't want to hear it. Go ahead and do so against your better judgment though.
Yeah.
You are doing things, you're not acting the way, if you really had autonomy, your heart of hearts, if you're able to follow your heart of hearts, you will not be making those choices.
Absolutely.
It's painful to hear. It's painful to hear. And as you say, it's the ignorance. Because if this person understood for real what is at stake here, they would buy into it.
Absolutely. So the best I can do is
what you're doing.
Exactly.
What you're doing right here.
Other mothers who are going through the same thing, they feel like they're alone. They don't know what these things mean. They get all these papers from school. I've had a mom who I talked to, and the school had been insisting that the child get an evaluation done for years. And I asked her, has the child had a psychological evaluation? She said no. And I said, there's absolutely no way. There's no way that your child could not have had one. She's like, who do I ask for this? I'm like, go to the teacher and ask for it.
Right.
And she asked for the report. She brought it in to the appointment. And guess what we found out? That the test that we're about to do had already been done.
So what had happened to it now? It had been filed away somewhere, and
I'm asking her, do you not have a copy of this? She said she doesn't remember. And I said, okay, I could understand. Once they tell you that maybe your child is going to be in this category, maybe you just zapped out, or what happened, I'm not sure.
You just hit the delete button in your head somewhere, and it just vanished.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering to whether the school, I don't know, because you can do all the zapping you want to do. We have a document there, and we are supposed to follow it. If it's the thing says read aloud, that's one of the modifications that comes along. The child needs to be read, the questions read aloud to the child. Sometimes the child needs an extended amount of time to process things, so they're given extra time to take a test. All of those accommodations that happen there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have parents who are attending IEP meetings. They don't know. They don't know what the IEP meetings is for. They don't
just initial.
And after that, they sign. If you don't understand, don't sign.
Right. Ask.
Ask. If you have to hold up on signing and say, I need to talk to somebody first. You can do that.
Let you do that. I cannot tell you how many in all these years of teaching. There's no year that academic year that goes by that I don't sit in on those meetings, and all of us put our signatures there, and then and they modify those things. They tell you that now yes, he's outgrown this one, he's able to do this, or it doesn't quite apply to this particular subject because in this subject here's how they test the thing, sort of, and all of those things.
Absolutely. They have no idea. I have a mom, and I say, clap for you, mom. But there's a mom in our community. Before every IEP meeting, she already knows. She gives me the heads up. IEP is coming in 2 months.
Because I tell you, it says on the document the next time that evaluation will be done.
And then she calls me 1 month in advance, and she say, "Hey, the IEP meeting is coming up in 1 month. I don't have a date yet, but once I have a date, I'll let you know." As soon as she gets a date, she sends me a message. The IEP meeting is on this date, okay?
You should be waiting to see what
questions should I ask? Half the times I don't know. So I said, you know what? Send me the previous IEP report. Let me look at it. I look at the IEP report from the last time. By the way, IEPs must be done. If you have to write this down, write it down. Write down all the key points. IEPs are renewed every year, so annually. So if one was done today, what's today's date? 9/18/22. The next one will be done 9/18/23. Okay.
It's not one time and we can now proceed from here out.
Psychological education evaluation reports. This one is a must know. They are done every 3 years.
Okay.
If you don't stay on top of the school, oh well.
No, it can come and just slide right by. And
exactly.
It's slide on. You see, well,
slide on right by.
Because it's not as if there's a lack of things to be done in a school on any given day. Exactly. We're fighting drugs, as somebody has brought something to somebody has brought arms, there's a shooting thing. So if you don't stand up there, that's where the self-advocacy,
that's where it comes in.
You don't stand there and say, my child, you will look at this thing and look at that thing, you will just slide.
Yes. I am looking at I'm looking at children who are coming and I'm asking parents, I'm looking at the psychological event that was done 2 years ago. It's not even writing anymore. IEP has been renewed. I'm like, wait, you're renewing the IEP based on what? Like, what
evaluation? Yeah.
This kid needs another evaluation within the school system to see where they are. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if you don't remind the school.
In fact, sometimes I even be the matter you're supposed to transfer out of high school into college.
Yes.
Because some people think, okay, now, all of this stuff started happening when they were in this institution, this high school. So as they graduated and the graduation has happened, your child is still there. Your child you're supposed to even be carrying those files are transferable as the background information.
Absolutely.
Maybe they're going to do a new evaluation and everything and see where they come back the history. Like any medical, who goes and starts with it? When you go to the new dentist, whatever it is, they're like, where are your files from?
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay when you sit at an IEP meeting, parents, if you sit at an IEP meeting and they're saying, Mom, do you think, if you don't know, just say, I don't know.
Right.
Please just help me, tell me what will work best. Keep in mind, based on our work schedules here, the teachers actually spend most time with your child.
Right.
If you look at the schedules,
right.
So that teacher sees things in that child that they know what can help.
You don't get to see.
Does not work. Yep. So you, to be honest with you, you don't spend that much time. All you have is the weekend, and half the times some parents are working on weekends. Right. Or the weekends is pretty much for me just to keep my feet up and relax. I don't have time to interact with this child.
Right. Oh, that is a whole different issue. That's the topic of a whole different other show.
Definitely.
Some people got to know their children when the pandemic struck, and they had to, they're like, who is this? The teacher has been telling me about you. So I would be arguing and saying, no, my child cannot. No, here's the child for you at home. They can see them and you're like, oh, really? You're a little surprised at what you've discovered there.
So if you don't know, tell the therapist you don't know, okay? It's okay to tell the therapist, I don't know. The therapist sees the child. They're an expert in that area. So they know what can help and what will not help, what will work, what can work. They'll make suggestions. Let's try this, let's try this. So be honest. Just say, I don't know. And be familiar, to talk to other people. Once your child, and this is back to, because I skipped and I went to the school, what happens in system. I'm going to go back to once you get the diagnosis. Once
what you do next, yes.
Trust you me, there are other people in the community that are struggling with the same thing or are walking the same path. It makes no sense. And this is a true story. I have driven to a state. First of all, when I saw the address, I'm like, wait a minute, this address looks familiar.
Right.
I'm going to find out. There are 3 parents right next door to each other, and they don't know. We're
Cameroonian.
Exactly.
I mean, you say, who would carry my business? Telling people.
It's not carrying it. Let me tell you,
that's how we see.
The things that could have worked for me, I can share that information with you. Maybe parents in house A is struggling with something that house B has solved, and house B is struggling with something that house A has resolved. Y'all talk to each other, share information. You will find out how much you can help each other. Join your local support groups.
Right.
It's faster.
Right.
Everybody can call Dr. Kilo from today to tomorrow. But guess what? If I go on vacation, you can't reach me. What's going to happen?
Whereas what the solution to your problem is next door.
There we go. It's right next door.
I tried to call Dr. Kim. She's gone on vacation to Cancun. She's all the way in Mexico. You're trying to reach her there. The solution, your issues, right?
There's so many parents who are doing fantastic. Yes, they may not be out there talking about their stories. It's because we're all at different stages in our journey.
Right.
One of us is at different stages.
Right.
It could be that parent who they're still trying to get acclimated with certain things. They're still trying to find their bearings. They're still in the creating folder stage. That's what I like to call it. We're still creating the folder. And then you have those who have created the folders. They know every chapter in that folder.
Yes.
They can wake up at night and just do this and say, with their eyes closed, they know it already. Talk to each other, okay? Right. If it's okay, you can call and say, hey, I can refer you with the consent of that parent. I can connect you guys together so you can talk.
Right.
That's how we
do. Just the idea of realizing that you're not alone. It's not just you, it's also part of the whole thing. So you realize that, okay, there's other people going through the same things. The problem is not unique to you.
Absolutely.
And then they look at them, they've coped with it. You can see the success story there. And that can tell you that, okay, so I should not be as, I don't know, discouraged as I feel. Look at what's going on there. There's every good thing to say for what you're recommending there. Making those support systems, that's the support.
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually joined this support group right here in Georgia. It was a bunch of parents, and I got a lot of information from them, and I'm like, wow. But I'll tell you what. So this, her kids are older now, but she's African American. This woman put together a network of mothers. This is unbelievable. These women can advocate in the school system from tomorrow. The changes that they make, but not only that, they have inside details to funding that you can get for your child. These women can get you any type of funding you want. Listen, if you all don't join support groups, if one of us is not available, then you stand the stock. You know, sometimes it could take me up to a month to get back to you. That's right. There's a long list of other parents, and sometimes I skip lines based on severity of
urgency. Yeah,
exactly, the urgency. It's not only within the Cameroonian community. I have other communities that I serve as well, and also right here in the state of Georgia, there are other parents that I serve as well. So it could take me a while to get to you. It's good that we all connect. Parents, we need to come together. We need to talk to each other. We need to share ideas.
Right.
There are things that one parent is understanding and that another parent does not understand. Share that idea with that parent. Help that parent.
Right. How did you handle this? Did you notice this? And say, oh yeah, my child went through that. This is what we did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So going to the question E, I know I touched briefly on the
education already because we went into IEPs and stuff.
Yes, I know I went back. So going back to, I want to go to the IEP part of the
talking education
in the education system. And I think
I'm hearing all of this and you know, inside of me, I'm going, my goodness, Cameroon, oh, do we have IEP?
No. Unfortunately, in Cameroon, we're not there yet. I know for sure that we will get there. We're working on something.
Good. And I hope whoever, this show is watched, listened to everywhere, including Cameroon specifically. And I'm hoping people are listening who run schools and who are in the health field are listening and trying to prevent all of these things, because many a kid that you're describing there has gotten the cane for this so-called bad behavior and failing this thing and failing that one, and which we attribute to strong head. The child, the year 12, and the child cannot hear that 12 ever. That's not the issue. It's not strong head. It's a physiological thing. Absolutely. It's not what you're thinking. Yeah.
A lot of the problems that we're seeing, behavior, what we call behavior things for children with autism, comes from one area, which is addressed by OT, occupational therapy, sensory processing issues. That's where it comes from. And the three categories that I mentioned, the other three senses that I mentioned that is least spoken of is the most affected. in children with autism. The interoceptive, that is that feeling that you get on the inside. You know how when you get a just queasy in the stomach? That's interoceptive. That's the signal that your internal body gives you. When you get hungry, you get a sensation. Sometimes it could be nausea. Sometimes you could hear that your stomach
growling.
That is your interoceptive senses. Some kids with autism don't know how to respond to it. It's either they under-respond to it, that means they just sit there.
Right.
You're wondering why your child is not telling you they're hungry for an entire day. Exactly. That is their interoceptive senses. And some kids overreact to it, that the slightest hunger, as soon as they start screaming and they're bouncing off the, and you
Armageddon has landed.
Exactly. So that's it. That's interoceptive. The other one I mentioned was proprioceptive, that not being aware of, your surroundings, your boundaries. You don't know where your body is. You have no awareness of your own body. You just throw your body anywhere. Exactly. And then you have
the other people's spaces, and then the social skills that the rest of us have learned are like, hey.
Right. You just meet a total stranger and you just lay on their lap.
Right.
You just sleep on them.
I have a precious one at school like that. Just the hugger. He came to the cafeteria. It's really right behind me. He's following me, going to wherever I'm going to, and they have to tell him, "Come on back."
Yep. They meet you. Those are the ones that they meet you. As the first thing they do is they touch your face.
Right.
They touch you. They have no awareness of that personal space and their own body awareness. They have none of that. And then, of course, the vestibular I mentioned, it has everything to do with balance. So they're very discoordinated. That's where the motor skills are coming in, the fine motor deficit. So those three areas are mostly affected. But a lot of people don't pay attention to it. So for the kids with autism, those are the three ones that commonly gets put to the side. That's why I stress on OT for sensory processing. Other aspect as to why I stress OT for sensory processing. If you leave in this week, it does. If you look anything like me within the school system, make sure that your OT from outside was done for sensory processing. You take that to school, because if you don't mention that, what happens is a lot of, if you look like me again,
right,
you will get the category of intellectual disability. Once that gets put on there, once they put that on there, I can't help.
Right.
I seriously can't. I have sat in
that is just the label you want to be thoroughly afraid of.
Exactly. Once that gets put on there, it will pretty much take a team of psychologists who were as good as O.J. Simpson's team to say it is not intellectual disability. If you get my point here.
It will be Johnny Cochrane that will have to come out of it, resurrect and come defend that one.
So I will honestly suggest, make sure you get that OT for sensory processing.
Right.
And make sure that the school is aware of that. Because a lot of times they're only addressing the fine motor. It's a pen and pencil or crayon.
Right.
That's it. Everything else, especially the three senses that I just mentioned, no one's looking at that.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
That is a lot of valuable information there to unpack. That's why the minute this has aired on Radio, it will be uploaded onto YouTube so people can go and look at the thing, which
absolutely,
of course, the natural thing to do now is this community support thing. You've talked about joining the parents themselves, those directly concerned, joining support groups and stuff. But those children, like every other person's child, they live in a community. We're all there. Some of us that don't have the actual maybe direct child and don't have maybe the grandchild kind of a thing. What is the community supposed to be doing to help with this issue?
The community needs to involve all of them. I know a lot of families, and that's because the community as a whole, when things are being planned and created, no one takes into consideration. No one looks at the extra step of how do we accommodate those families that have these challenges. And I'll say this again, what may be none of your business today may just come knocking on your door. I have seen this firsthand.
Right.
With folks who were like, this is none of my business.
What
And then I got that call from them because a relative of theirs, they need my expertise like tomorrow. And so what may be none of your business today may just come knocking at your door tomorrow.
Right. And if it's not your own direct door, meaning, okay, you say you've already had your children and no, they're not, there's no autism with it. What? I'm sitting there waiting for grandchildren. Every day I say, Papa, God, let my child marry so he can have children. How do you know? That grand Pekin, even if Pekin no baby, for grand Pekin. How do you know?
Right.
And then you're the kind of person too who, besides that, not coming to you directly, but you're living in society, you're going to meet these children in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Don't slap a kid that comes and just hugs you. You don't know, if you don't know, you're not trying to make yourself aware. Don't call the police and so on, because if you had known that there's that possibility, when you just know better, when you just have knowledge in your head, you then just act better, take better decisions. Even for some of us, the teachers, to not just decide that this is what's wrong with this child. But because sometimes we get to school and there's a little bit, they try their best, they really do, to get those IEPs there, and we're emailed the thing to say, go look at the case here, look at this case there, they try. But usually by the first day that the kid is coming and sitting in your classroom, you haven't yet had your full caseload of who is in your class that has been identified and has an IEP.
Absolutely.
So I have since learned not to just say this one that just gets out of their seat and walks around. Hey, write them up, scream at them, yank them with the so and so thing, But before I knew about Tourette syndrome, I can imagine how I would have reacted. The girl jumps up and she needs to go pace up and down in the hallway. Before I met my friend, where are you going to? Where do you think you're going? Did I just say now that before you step out here, you need to say, I need to go to the restroom and please, madam, yes, madam, kind of a thing. If I did not know better, now I know. So I don't just jump to conclusions like that. So we ourselves need to be educating ourselves on all of those things. I'm listening here, whatever you're talking about OT there, occupational therapy, you're talking about all of those things. The more we know, the better we will act and the more we will be supportive to these families who, of course, have a heavier load on them because of these children. They have special needs.
Absolutely.
They have extra needs that the average kid may not have and require more attention, which means that we have to be a little bit more accommodating, right down to when you live in the journey. Stop telling this parent over and over to be the one to host and host and host now. If you know that it's like this, they have little things that you can do that also.
Exactly. Those little things they do.
Yes.
Even if you want that parent, if you're insisting on that parent to host, what are you as the group? What are you, the group members? How are you guys coming together to help that mother to see that? No, yeah, that because it's a lot for her to deal with. It's a lot because she knows what the reality of her children are and having to address that. So what is the group doing? I see a lot of times that the group members are not doing anything. They're just leaving it to, like, oh, this one is hosting this event this time. And they also insist, like, you haven't hosted. If you can't host, you can't be part of this meeting. Like,
exactly. Those insensitive things.
And you're not being sensitive because it just might be your grandkid.
And yes, and then you're surprised why now the parent is unwilling. You see that dad who wasn't wanting to say that, he's sitting and saying, he wants his friends to come and sit in his house and watch the MU Arsenal game. If you now say that his child has this, he's saying, okay, maybe they will not want to come to my house, right. All those things, those little subtle things that are in the way, which if we were all compassionate, first of all, knowledgeable about the whole idea and then compassionate. Because the other thing about saying this person must host, if you cannot host, you cannot be part of the meeting. There's also the flip side of it. Oh, we don't want to go to your house because I have seen that kind of maniacal, I'm sorry to use maniacal like one does before. Somebody says, even for albino, no, I won't go. The day that they're having the meeting in that house, you'd be amazed. And then you see the same person, the next minute is there, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. I'm going, oh, that other child that you said you're not going is not, you you compartmentalize the thing and look at a certain way, and then you're not applying that same compassion to the next case, that you're saying of being inclusive, and then sensitive and compassionate in the whole thing, because
absolutely,
even if it may not be autism, something else.
Absolutely.
Something else that may be affecting you, that will may decide to just shun you. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle that then?
Yeah.
You know, so we really do need, as a community, to come around same way we do with people with disabilities. Yes. Because if it had not been for people advocating, buildings already started having ramps and things. When the people affected in the wheelchair says, how am I going to get up these stairs, these steps here with on a wheelchair? So I don't get to go to the Smithsonian. I don't get to go to the so. I'm not good enough to go to the museum. Why have you not considered me and the accessibility?
I'll tell you, now that you mentioned that, I'll tell you what community coming together can do. It's a very powerful tool, and we're overlooking it when we as a people, when we come together and raise our voice about we need help with this, you know, to address this thing within our community. It's a very powerful thing to do.
Right.
The Vietnamese community, I think it's either in North or South Dakota, one of those two. Can't remember exactly where, but the Vietnamese community came together and spoke with the local government in their state about getting help they wanted to create something for children with special needs.
Okay.
Cater to the Vietnamese community. There is a center that caters for children with autism for the Vietnamese community that is state funded. I'm not kidding. This is a real story.
Ooh.
Every therapist, specialist that works there, they do it. It's a volunteer. It's a center.
Right.
They all give their time. Here I am in Atlanta, and I have a family that lives in Peachtree City area. And we are having a hard time finding a Vietnamese speaking speech therapist for this child to get a speech evaluation. This child has been waiting for 6 months. And so I had no choice but to reach out to the president of the Vietnamese community.
All the way.
Right here. And I said, I know.
Right here to say, okay, has the child going to go all the way to the area?
Right. If you guys can come together and take this family, take them to these people so that they can get all the services, please, I need help.
Right.
We have a large Cameroonian community in DC. I don't see why not. That's the best I can say.
Right. Right. I don't know which is that one. No, I'll ask how to get this kind of thing started. Do we just a petition? We will figure it out. We'll figure it out. There's a huge community there, and even if we can't make several, once in like in Houston, Dallas, where the things are, but we can start there at least.
Exactly.
And for some of these things, it may be look, we all relocate and go to where things work better. We have kids with severe allergies and things. You don't go stay in certain states or certain cities because the pollen count is so high there, they can't function. Right. So if there's one there, you will do what you need to do if that's where it's going to work best for them.
Absolutely.
But yes, we can do parties. I have absolutely no problem with the party. I like musical dance, but we can just not be doing only the parties, the cultural thing and the so thing. We may want to be doing such a thing, those kinds of aspects too, that are very much a part of our existence. You know, you don't want to get to the point where you had a family that was out there and they're all outgoing when they were in their 20s, then bam, later on when the children started coming and then that's the case, you don't see them around anymore. That should bother you, that you don't get to see them and have them anymore because they're struggling with these things. Because I know that even with a friend of mine who with breast cancer, she said when she was diagnosed, she didn't know about, she was at a loss. But it's some other African lady who came to her and said, do you know we have a group where they even organize and they'll take you to go see, they take you to your appointments because if family is not available. Look at that kind of wonderful thing that will have gotten together and done. That just helps you, the person involved, able to catch your breath and even be able to feel cared for. So we really do need to think about that. I'm going to contact you after this and figure out what is it that one can do. How does one start that kind of a thing? We have the embassy there. We have groups that can advocate for things. That's how these laws, I keep saying it. We have laws that are called Kobe's so-and-so, Ashley so-and-so, the law so-and-so. They have those names because the mom, the dad, the somebody went to Capitol Hill there and testified and advocated and got signatures. And then it happened. They weren't just building homes with ramps. Somebody said, not fair, not fair. Had to march around a little bit with a little signboard someplace. Then they took note of it, lobbied with their congressperson, and then it was made to happen. It's about time those kinds of achievements become part of what we say we have been able to do as a society, as a community.
Absolutely. The last point I wanted to make, just so I don't think you mentioned it, and that jogged my memory, was we, yes, as people, community, parents, we need to talk to each other. We have to come together. Very necessary. I see parents who have no idea of autism state laws. The laws are different in each state. You're just in one state in this country, I promise you. Every state has a different autism law. And so they wake up, find a job in another state, yank the kids, move to that state, and they have no idea. Services were not being put in place, nothing. And they just move to that state. And then you have a child who's out of services for maybe a year, 6 months, 8 months, up to a year. And they don't even know how to begin the process. That should have started before you made that move, or before you even agreed to take that. You have to know what state you have the most access to, and target them in terms of, because it's okay to get another job, but here you are, you're raising children who are special needs. And
aren't you getting the job so you can look after your family? You're getting the job to do what?
Exactly.
The job and your paycheck so you can look after wife and children, for the wife, the husband and children.
Right.
And taking them to somewhere where they cannot be looked after. What's the point getting that hike in the paycheck, which is not going to translate into looking after the children you are doing it for? It defeats
right. They moved to another state, never established anything before they moved. And that's because they just assume that, okay, because I'm getting this must also be in this state. It's there, but the question is, how easy is it for you to access it? Maybe the accessibility is not that easy as it was in the previous state. Right. So you need to know all of that. How do you know all of that? You talk to a parent who lives in that state, who has the exact same issue as you are with a childhood. And a lot of times we're not talking to each other. You know why? Stigma and shame. You should not be ashamed. I have sat in a room with 10 parents. All 10 of them, I know, because
you are the common denominator.
I'm the common denominator.
Right.
But
right.
then I sit and I realize that
none
are aware.
We don't talk. We don't talk.
Struggling with each other.
Yeah.
And I know for sure this parent has overcome everything that this one is struggling with. Yeah. But I can't sit there and tell them.
I begin to voice it.
I can't.
Yeah, no.
It's very disturbing.
Right.
So I can only plead with you guys, please, we all need to come together and talk to each other. We have to help each other out. We have to. And
it's as I tell you, there are about 8 shows that can come out of this show, that what you should say. I tell you, it's not only about this. It comes to anything, even in terms of even marriage. Somebody sitting there that you've been married 30 years. And so you see the other one that she's at year 3. She says, Nago, you don't go so. You're sitting there and she's saying, Nago, you don't go so, saying, look at the one who was 30 years. She has a perfect, beautiful, normal. Have you ever seen me ever talk? Have you talked to her? Come, let her sit down and tell you.
Right.
She'll tell you. That is, no, this is not how it looks like every day. Right. But you want to actually do about anything, jobs even. How did you get this job? What resume writing even? This is how you do this resume thing. Oh my goodness, you put all of this there. No, they'll not look at you because they'll assume that this thing means this and that, and that. It will be interpreted this way. All kinds of aspects.
Yeah.
You were talking to each other, you would save yourself so much headache.
Yes.
By listening to somebody with more experience, because that's what you have the experience for.
Absolutely.
So you can tell somebody else, oh, been there, done that. Sit down, let me tell you how, and offer some tips and things. But that is even so. In this kind of case, it's a life and death issue. When I say life and death, I mean the person was telling you about how that this breaks marriages. Well,
right.
The poor marriage now is a casualty of this thing, and it needn't be so. It needn't be that way. If somebody can tell you, look, been there, done that. No, don't let this be a damper. Don't let this be an issue, a thorn in your flesh. We have had the same issue. We've solved it. Look at our children are healthy and doing very well. So, point well taken. We've listened to you. I tell you, it's never a dull moment with you. We still haven't done the dance class side of you.
I know.
But that will come. This was an emergency come back and talk thing. Yeah. Because I talked to you the other day and you were this close to tears. You even left me a voicemail. I was like, oh my goodness, no, we need to have this, we need to do this and put it out there and let people hear, because it's going to save for the betterment of the kids themselves, and then for the good of their parents, the good of the community, and then save this necessary friction that we're having in these marriages that are being threatened. Maybe if dad now has listened too, if he doesn't want to listen in front of his wife, Papa, take this video. When you go sit in your car, or I don't know where it is, listen to it quietly and figure out and just come and pretend that you just had a sudden change of mind, no matter if this is what educated you, but do what you need to do. Exactly. Because it starts right there in the home. If you're not together, speaking with one voice and supporting each other, the children are going to be the casualties of the whole thing finally. It works like that in everything, whether it's autism or any other thing in a home. If you're not on the same page and you're quarreling and there's issues happening there, the damage those children that are in that home, especially doubly so with children that have special needs.
Absolutely.
So thank you. The door of this MUSINGS and music show and Vosaworld Radio is open. If you want to come and start your own show, come start it.
I wish I had the time.
Come do it. I know what it means for you to sit and take this amount of time to just talk. If you didn't have a passion and a heart for your community and a love for your community, you wouldn't be doing it.
Yes.
So I thank you. Somebody else would say, yeah, but I don't have the time. But you make the time. They were not here to see, the viewers and listeners were not here to see it before we started recording the show. The precious children came, Mommy.
Yes.
I could sit with Daddy for a bit. I had something. Then the next one came, Mommy. Can I do something? And you said to them, I need to do this. If that takes sacrifice and really love of community. If I had a medal, I don't know, bottle of water, I don't know what to give you. Cola, I think I have one cola left downstairs there. I'll ship it to you for doing this, because this is a wealth of information, ladies and gentlemen. I have dubbed her the autism whisperer.
Yes, she did.
Yes, she gets it. She knows it. This is not just science read it in the book. As she told you last time, all three of her children are on the autism spectrum too, so she knows what she's talking about. And she's done a fantastic job of raising them. So please listen to what she's saying. It can only help. If you are not the one directly involved, this thing's going to be on YouTube. Hit that forward button, which is what you did the last time, and I thank you for it. I thank you for it. Many of you listened and watched, and you shared the video and made other people aware and helped find solutions. So thank you for watching, for listening, and thank you, Dr. Kilo, for the wonderful job that you do for our community.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. I'm sorry, but I need to throw in one thing.
Please do.
Before I forget. When you're reading the IEP, which is the Individualized Education Plan, it will tell you what category your child is listed under. There is a primary and there is a secondary. Those are called exceptionalities. So there'll be a primary exceptionality. That is the major category that they found was the issue that your child is experiencing based on academic standards. So the primary exceptionality can either be one of those other things that I listed. It could be autism, it could be speech and language impairment. So which one is most outstanding? Which one is impacting the child the most? Will be listed as the primary exceptionality. And then secondary exceptionality is what comes after. A lot of times for the kids who get the primary exceptionality of autism spectrum disorder, usually get a secondary exceptionality of SLI, which is speech and language impairment.
Okay.
For those kids who don't get an evaluation done before they get into the educational system, they're mostly getting the primary exceptionality of GDD. That's D as in David, which is, or sorry, they get the primary exceptionality of S as in Sam, DD, D as in David, which is significant developmental delay. And that only came about based on what you, the parent, tells them. Does your child do, when they ask you, does your child have repetitive behaviors and things like that? And you say, when you deny all of that, and even if the school sees it, there's nothing they can do. They're going by what you tell them. So they put them in the significant developmental delay. And then the secondary could be SLI, which is speech and language impairment. I just want to clear this up because this was a statement that was made by a Cameroonian parent. Special education in this country is not a place for bad kids, for children who are stubborn. That does not happen here. It's a no-no. Special education are for children who have additional needs. In order for those needs to be addressed, they need to put them in special education. Now, the categories are based on how many hours of services that the child is going to get. If the child needs 10 hours of a specific service, for example, speech, and the only category that offers 10 hours of speech is autism, that's the category that they put that child in. Does not necessarily mean that that child has autism. That is the category that best meets the child.
That describes, yes, that's the closest thing that would offer him those services. So it's a clerical thing. That is a clerical administrative thing, absolutely, not a medical thing as such.
However, when it comes to autism, 99.9% of the time, the category is accurate, because before they put a child in that category, they have done a few other things other than just sitting and listening to you and watching your child. They've given you some screening that has definitely shown that this is the best and a possible category outside of here. That's what I've noticed for the most part. It's usually always accurate. It never fails. But I wanted to mention that part because when I ask my parents, what is the primary exceptionality? They tell me, I don't know. That's a problem. You need to know.
And it will be on that IEP. You said under what category or under what heading?
It will say exceptionality. It will be either primary exceptionality or secondary exceptionality. It's going to be on the very front page of that IEP. It's nowhere else. Right. Very first page, it will give you the child's demographic. Either somewhere in the demographic or below the demographic, depending on what state and county you are in, it will list primary exceptionality, secondary exceptionality. It will tell you next to it what that exceptionality is.
Right. Bottom line, we need to read the documents thoroughly. It falls right back down to that. Because if you read the entire thing, whether you had said so or not, we will end up seeing it. And if we don't understand, read number one, ask questions number two.
Absolutely.
Don't feel like I'm here, I have this master's degree, I have this doctorate degree, I cannot be looking as if I don't know what I'm doing. You better look like you don't know what you're doing if you really don't know what you're doing, because that's not your level, your area of expertise. So maybe you do need to ask the questions and have somebody competent in that area answer them for you. And she is here. I don't know if last time we talked about how to reach you or whether it's even that's the thing.
Yes, I need to. What I'm going to do is I will take a picture of my card.
Right.
And I'll take a picture of it and I'll send you on WhatsApp. But I have a card that.
That's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. So that when I put the flyer out, letting people know that this show is going to be on. I will have the information on how to contact you along with it too. And the day I will have it typed even on the YouTube thing so they can see how it is that they can contact you.
Absolutely. I will do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm not thanking you for just myself. I'm thanking you for the throng of people, the full community. I mean, African community, not just a Cameroonian community, soon to be even over in Cameroon itself, in the homeland itself, for what you do. You're a valuable, you're an asset to our community, and we applaud you, we thank you. The next time I see anybody saying, okay, there's going to be some recognition thing somewhere, I'm like, okay, let's contribute a dime or two for that plaque. You deserve to have that because you really have that. Frankly, with it.
My pleasure to serve. I was born, this is what I was born to do. So I'm definitely.
Thank you for recognizing it and actually doing what it is you've been called to do. It shows in your passion for it. It shows. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening. This has been the MUSINGS and Music Show. MBIWAN MONJIMBO has had Dr. Kilo right here, Dr. Bernadette Kilo right here. And we are both wishing you the very best. And you know, by God's grace, you'll be hearing from us and seeing our faces again. All melanin. We'll be right in front of you pretty soon again. Trust me.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Mm-hmm.